Choppy waters. That's how our premier described the coming weeks when it comes to tariffs. The tariffs from the U.S. and our own retaliatory ones are driving up economic anxiety. We wanted to get a feel for the local impact, so we reached out to Keith Moen. He's the executive director of the North Saskatoon Business Association, and he joins us now in studio. Good morning, Keith.
Good morning, Stephanie.
I feel like we've had this conversation before, but how did you feel when both the U.S. tariffs and our own retaliatory ones were finally confirmed?
Yeah, it's disappointing, disheartening for sure. The business community relies on certainty, as we've talked about before, and this certainly brings about a new level of uncertainty that we haven't experienced for some time. But having said that, our members are quite optimistic that this will be, a blip in the course of action, and we'll have calmer minds and better policies in place in the future.
Can you remind us what are some of the biggest industries we should be thinking about who could be hit here in Saskatoon?
For sure, and it always boils down to the big three of the food, fuel, and fertilizer. So in terms of the food side, agriculture will definitely be impacted. Most of the imports, or rather exports that we do from our ag sector, the commodities that is, so things like wheat, durum, canola oil, those are exported largely into the U.S., and so those markets will be certainly damaged, I would say, because the cost obviously is going to go up, both on the importer side, but certainly at the consumer side in the U.S., which makes our product more uncompetitive, of course. And so that's one. Manufacturing is another one where we have things like farm implements that are world-class farm implements that are manufactured here and exported largely again to the U.S. They're also going to be impacted considerably. So that's on the food side. Fuel, oil. We have the crude oil situation, which is it's only a 10% tariff on that for now, but I think that's still going to be problematic. And then on the fertilizer side, certainly the mining industry and the potash industry for sure will be impacted because it's the American Midwest that's the primary benefactor of our product here.
What have you been hearing locally in the past month from businesses here in our city as these tariffs approached?
Frustration, quite frankly, it's been challenging times that we've seen over the past number of years, obviously due to the pandemic that we've come through. And so just as things are perhaps starting to get some businesses back on their feet and able to compete again and think about, viability and profitability beyond that. And now these tariffs get implemented and counter tariffs, and that's not necessarily the right solution either. I'm not sure what the right solution is aside from actually removal of all tariffs, like the NAFTA and then the CUSMA agreements that we've had in place worked wonderfully. I guess, but that goes to say I'm old enough to remember pre-NAFTA, and we as a country had a strong economy prior to that as well. But so that worst case scenario that might be what we're looking at going back towards. But we obviously would prefer a free and open market.
What kind of immediate impact are you expecting here in the city for the average person?
Well, likely inflation will be felt. It may not be immediate, but certainly over time there will be inflationary pressures put on consumers. We may see some retraction in terms of job creation. We may even see some job losses. So that's obviously going to impact people directly. It's just going to be, we're part of the world economy. We're part of the national economy, the North American economy. And, economists are predicting that this is likely going to cause some form of recession. So we're likely not to be, we'll likely be affected by that recession as well. So it remains to be seen, but, we have to keep going because we have no other choice.
I know you mentioned you're hoping this is just going to be a blip, and we have heard from people on Trump's side saying, there could be another announcement today, not a total pullback on tariffs in general, maybe a decrease, we don't know. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, it's which way is the wind blowing today? That's really how it goes. It's you never know what's coming with President Trump in power because he obviously has an end game in mind, and no one seems to know what that end game is because he has so many red herrings that he throws out to try and distract you from what the real game is. And so until things are actually implemented and enacted, it's hard to guess what his next move is going to be and what the reaction will be in the markets.
I mean, he is technically, I guess, a businessman. What do you think the end game is for him here?
Well, the way of his business is not necessarily the way of most people doing business in terms of the intimidation factor and driving his suppliers into bankruptcy and that sort of thing. There's not too many successful business people that I know that act in that manner. And so I think he's a unicorn because of the way that he's managed. He does think, I've read Bill Brower's books about the Russian oligarchs, and I'm not certain that Trump doesn't think that he can't be similar to that in the way that he manages his operations, perhaps with some of the less underhanded things that happen in Russia happening in America. But he's been an enigma that no one really knows how to take.
So if things stay the way that they are with these tariffs, or, possibly we see more tariffs put into place, long term, how bad could the fallout be for us?
It could be significant, but the reality is, the nice thing is, I should say, is that President Trump, through his policies, has done something that no prime minister or other leader in Canada has been able to do, which is to galvanize the national pride, and with that comes the buy local and buy Canadian sort of phenomenon. And we see things like Premier Smith agreeing with Prime Minister Trudeau's counter tariffs, and we hear Premier Legault in Quebec talking about the possibility of pipelines in Quebec or through Quebec, and the Atlantic provinces saying that they need Western Canadian crude. We've never heard this kind of dialogue before in Canada, so it's heartening to hear that. And so it's going to take time for all of these things to come to fruition. But I think Canadian resolve is strong, and I think that there's a distinct possibility that this could, in the long run, be a good thing for Canada.
You're sounding pretty optimistic. How else do you say optimistic in a situation like this? What are your thoughts and hopes for the next few weeks?
Well, I think you have to remain optimistic, and the reality is it's not going to be as bad as the pandemic, and we've come through the pandemic, and there were certainly losses and casualties in terms of jobs and job creation and the economy and so on, and certainly government debt. But the reality is, we as a country, we as a business community survived, and we'll survive this. It's going to, take some, measures and some pain to get through it. But, we will, collectively survive. Unfortunately, like I said, there will be casualties again this time. But let's just hope that we can mitigate those and keep that to a minimum.
Well, Keith, thank you so much for your time and insight this morning. We appreciate it.